Chapter 121, Victory in the Match, Part 2. Just as Nalan Yanran finished releasing her Do technique and was at her most exhausted and relaxed, a dark shadow loomed behind her. Xiao Yan's fists clenched, energy surging, and he smashed them back toward her like a battering ram. 8 extremities collapse! As the shout left his lips, energy in Xiao Yan's palms erupted. The brutal blow struck Nalan Yanran squarely. The pale green Du Qi armor that had clothed her flawless form shattered inch by inch. Her body slammed into the ground and skidded across the square for dozens of meters before finally coming to rest. Xiao Yan let out a light breath, beckoned with his right hand, and drew the Xuan heavy ruler back into his grasp. He had tossed the ruler earlier to distract her. Freed from the restraint of holding the weapon, the Do Qi in his body instantly surged. He moved like lightning, appearing behind Nalan Yanran and sending her flying. In truth, Nalan Yanran had only managed to hold out so long by maintaining a speed slightly faster than Xiao Yan's while he was burdened by the ruler. Once he discarded it, that speed advantage vanished. Xiao Yan's higher realm made the difference decisive. Senior Sister Nalan has lost. Countless faces stared in stunned disbelief as the moon-white-robed figure rolled across the square. The Cloud Mist sect's favored daughter, their young sect leader, had been defeated so easily by Xiao Yan. The Cloud Mist sect disciples around the arena grew anxious, but the figure on the ground slowly began to rise. By her appearance, she still had the strength to continue. Thank goodness. I knew Senior Sister Nalan wouldn't fail so easily. Relief swept through the Cloud Mist sect troops as Nalan Yanran stood again. Wiping the blood from the corner of her mouth, she fixed Xiao Yan with a stubborn gaze. She knew there was a substantial gap between them, but she refused to yield in spirit. Xiao Yan, I never expected you to burst forth with such speed and power. I know my odds are slim, but for the honor of the Cloud Mist sect, I won't fall so easily. Xiao Yan watched her rise. He slowly raised his right hand, then suddenly clenched it and called aloud, "Detonate!" The invisible blow hit Nalan Yanran like a second assault. Her face drained of color. She spat a mouthful of crimson blood and, wide-eyed with shock, collapsed once more. Xiao Yan had shattered her Du Qi armor and let the hidden energy of the 8 extremities collapse seep into her body. Now that he triggered its explosion, she took the damage all at once. Outside the ring, the Cloud Mist sect disciples had no idea what had just happened. Joy had only just flared on their faces before being replaced by confusion and horror. They were utterly at a loss, their emotions alternating between disbelief and stupefaction. It seems Yaner's 3 years of tempering were indeed effective, Xiao Zhan murmured in admiration. Yes, fourth brother has made tremendous progress. Xiao Kun added, looking up toward Yun, seated on the opposite stone wall, a hint of apology in his expression. He immediately unfurled his golden rock wings and swept down to Nalan Yanran's side. After giving Xiao Yan a confirming nod, he checked her wounds. Finding she was not mortally injured, he relaxed. Xiao Yan had held back. He slipped a healing medicinal pill into her mouth. Perhaps because of the pill, Nalan Yanran soon opened her eyes and struggled to stand again. She slowly cast a glance over the 2 Xiao brothers standing near the square, a trace of rueful amusement in her beautiful eyes. Both were younger than her, yet far more accomplished. She had indeed been too arrogant. Xiao Yan, I lost this match. 3 years ago we agreed that if I lost, I would become your servant. Enough, that was only a joke. Don't think about it, Xiao Kun cut in at once, seeing the embarrassed look that was about to turn self-destructive. Besides, I'm not interested in you becoming my servant. Don't ever bring it up again. Our 3-year agreement is over. Xiao Yan didn't know why Xiao Kun interrupted so quickly, but the words were exactly what he had wanted to hear. Thank you, he said. Nalan Yanran hesitated, then let the thought go and bowed slightly to thank them. With that settled, Yun slowly rose from her stone seat and announced officially, in this match, Xiao Yan of the Xiao family is victorious. The Cloud Mist sect disciples fell silent, shocked into frozen stares that occasionally flicked toward the 2 Xiao brothers with rising dread. Everywhere in the crowd from the Jiama Empire, people turned to watch the Xiao family. After a long beat of quiet, the murmurs began again. Today's events were explosive news. A young man from a minor city's Xiao family had defeated the Cloud Mist sect's young sect leader with ease. 3 years ago, he had been no Do practitioner. Now he had risen to a strength far beyond Nalan Yanran's. The ramifications would ripple through the empire. With the Xiao family's sudden display of power, the fragile balance among the three great families in the imperial capital might shift. People looked at Nalanji with new curiosity and pity. He had lost an excellent prospective son-in-law and a powerful ally. The crowd couldn't hide a certain schadenfreude. Nalanji's regret was evident. His hands clenched until veins stood out, his legs trembling slightly. "Wait!" Just as the crowd began to disperse, a cold shout rang from the Cloud Mist sect's back mountain. A vast, ancient aura descended in its wake, heavy and overwhelming, like a dragon awakening. Yunyun's usually calm, ethereal face drained of color. She had been in the middle of considering a private meeting with Xiao Kun, and the timing of her teacher's awakening filled her with dread. She had a strong premonition that he was coming for the Xiao family. Yunyun did not know Xiao Kun's true status. She didn't realize he had already reached Dozong, so her expression grew even more panicked. Chapter 122. Yunshan appears. A boundless aura, like an awakening dragon, rolled out from the Cloud Mist sect and blanketed the entire compound. Instantly, the disciples fell to their knees in reverence. The elders, while not kneeling, bowed their heads slightly. That aura. Nalan Yanran stared toward the back mountain, her eyes wide with surprise. She could not understand why the sect's grandmaster, who had been in seclusion for so long, would suddenly emerge. That old man. He actually broke through to Dozong. Hai Bodong, who had been preparing to return to the imperial capital with Xiao Kun, felt the pressure and muttered, "This is Yun Shan." Xiao Kun confirmed the sensation himself. The aura was indeed at the early Dozong level. Hearing Hai Bodong's name, he realized who it must be. Confusion burned through him. No one had summoned Yunshan. Why had he come out of seclusion, and why did he seem hostile? Xiao Kun had originally planned to slip into the Cloud Mist sect quietly after the competition to investigate Protector Wu. If he found him, he intended to kill him swiftly so the Hall of Souls would learn of the death late and be slow to react. Yunshan was meant to be dealt with later, sealed, if necessary. That plan suddenly looked very different. He told Hai Bodong and Ya Fei to keep calm and wait. The other Xiao family members, familiar with Xiao Kun's strength, did the same, keeping their composure. When the oppressive aura faded slightly, a white figure shot from the depths of the mountain like a streak of moonlight. It had no wings, yet it moved through the void with uncanny speed. Each step left faint ripples in the empty space beneath it, and then the figure would flash 100 meters forward in an instant. After a few such strides, it hovered above the main square. The newcomer ignored Yunyun and the other sect members and fixed his gaze on the Xiao family with an expression of puzzled scrutiny, as if something about them did not add up. Xiao Kun narrowed his eyes and took in the figure. Yun Shan. The man wore an extremely simple white robe that billowed in the breeze, lending him an ethereal grace. Although he had silver hair that betrayed his years, his breakthrough to Dozong tightened and smoothed his features until he looked almost youthful, a handsome, warm-faced man. Hai Bodong, unable to hide a hint of envy, muttered, "I didn't expect a Dozong breakthrough would make someone look so young." Yunshan hovered in the air, still puzzled. He did not understand why Protector Wu of the Hall of Souls, who had interrupted his seclusion and ordered him out, would be concerned with the Xiao family of the Jiama Empire. Protector Wu had been explicit. Yunshan was to capture the Xiao family, especially their chieftain, Xiao Zhan, because Protector Wu was unable to act personally for some reason. "Master, what startled you enough to break your seclusion?" Yunyun spread her wings and landed behind Yunshan, anxious. Yunshan glanced back at her. "Yuner, it's nothing. I only have a few questions for some friends from the Xiao family. I would like them to remain here so we can talk." "Master, enough. Don't argue with me. I have my reasons." Yunshan's tone shut Yunyun down. Though she wanted to protest, she could not disobey her teacher and father figure. Instead, she looked anxiously at Xiao Kun in the viewing area below. Xiao Kun returned her gaze with a reassuring smile. Yunyun had seen his rapid rise and odd abilities. She trusted he would have some trump card. For the moment, she simply wished Xiao Kun to be able to leave the sect safely. Some friends from the Xiao family. Will you consent to be my guests at the Cloud Mist sect for a few days? Yunshan then announced aloud. Xiao Kun's eyes flicked between Yunshan and Yunyun, noting their exchange. Although the question raised his suspicions, he kept his voice cool. If you have questions, ask them plainly. There's no need for theatrics. Yunshan's expression hardened. These are secret and important matters, not to be discussed publicly. I insist you remain and answer them. Xiao Kun treated the suggestion with blunt refusal. I have no interest. We're leaving. He waved and began toward the square's exit. The Xiao family and the Mittel family hesitated only a moment before following. Xiao Kun knew Yunshan would not let this go easily. He adopted a deliberately uncooperative posture, hoping to force Yunshan's hand. If Yunshan attacked first and was injured in the response, the excuse would be easier to justify to Yunyun and to maintain future relations. Yunshan had wanted, at least partly, to demonstrate his authority before the influential figures of the Jiama Empire. Now, seeing Xiao Kun openly spurn him, a cold flash crossed his eyes. He struck. 10,000 winds binding. Knowing Protector Wu wanted them alive, Yunshan used a restraining dough technique rather than a killing blow. He clenched his fist and gathered the air into countless whips of wind that surged outward, forming rope-like bindings that flooded the sky and began to coil toward the Xiao family. A mere trick, Xiao Kun said, turning back as golden-green flames burst from his body. The flames licked and devoured the cyan wind ropes instantly, reducing them to nothing. The Xiao family and middle family members gasped. No one had expected an attack at Dozong level to be so stealthy. Had Xiao Kun not reacted, the ropes might have bound them before they understood what was happening. The sudden energy spike drew every gaze. A confrontation was now inevitable. Xiao Kun faced Yunshan, having easily dispelled the assault. For Yunyun's sake, I'll ask you once more, he said slowly, voice steady. Have you made up your mind? Yunshan, who had expected a more difficult exchange, felt his composure shift as he observed how effortlessly Xiao Kun neutralized his technique. The casual prowess unsettled him. His calm expression hardened into something far more solemn. Yunshan stared at the young figure, trying to read him, but found no trace, no hint of his true strength. The memory of that golden-green flame, the one that had made even him tremble, pulled at him. Xiao Kun's strange fire resembled the fourth-ranked Golden Emperor's sky-burning flame. Such a flame held terrifying power. If Yunshan, a Dozong, ever came into direct contact with it, he would be incinerated. Do Qi would not save him. The thought gave him pause. Silence fell over the square. Yunshan fixed his gaze on Xiao Kun's still fresh face and refused to believe it. A teenager, not yet 20, a Dozong? The previous displays could not be sustained, he thought. And if Xiao Kun were truly that strong, why had he not struck back? Why remain so polite? The questions hardened into resolve, and he snapped. Humph! Tricks! I don't believe someone so young could defeat me. Xiao Kun only sneered in return. How could you, who only just stumbled into the Duzong realm, know how vast the world is? Some people's talent is beyond your imagining. Then, without further parley, Xiao Kun lifted a foot and stepped into the void. The motion stunned everyone who thought they understood the situation. No one expected the youth who had become a Do King so young to make such a symbolic, deliberate move, but that very symbol was what marked a Dozong. Yunyun, standing behind Yunshan, covered her parted lips with a trembling hand. Yunshan's pupils constricted. All eyes fell to Xiao Kun's foot as if it held the answer. Time seemed to slow. Xiao Kun's right foot descended and found purchase as if on a solid plane. A ripple spread beneath it, the same kind of ripple Yunshan had made when he had walked the void moments ago. The confirmation snapped the crowd into shocked silence, then into noise. Xiao Kun raised his left foot and continued, stepping through the void until he stood level with Yunshan. Only when he was still did the onlookers recover. A Dozong! So young! How is this possible? Yunshan stared at him, furious and incredulous. Yunshan had labored for decades, only scraping a breakthrough to Dozong with the aid of a pill from the Hall of Souls late in life. And now this teenager, this boy, stood at the same height. The thought was unbearable. Xiao Kun ignored him and turned his attention instead to the beautiful face behind Yunshan. Yun, he said, smiling. A battle between dozongs spans a wide area. Step to the side for now. For your sake, I will hold back. Yun breathed a small sigh of relief and urged reconciliation. Xiao Kun, there must be some misunderstanding. Can't you both stop this? Xiao Kun gestured toward Yunshan. It was Yunshan who provoked the fight. You should ask him. Yunshan bristled. To him, Xiao Kun's rise to dozong must be the result of insane methods. For a boy to be a dozong at his age, he must have used forbidden means, he declared, righteous. It is my Cloud Mist sect's duty to root out such malignant tumors. Yun's face went pale. She could not understand why her teacher sought Xiao Kun's destruction. Knowing she could not stop it, she backed away, worry creasing her features. Xiao Kun's expression darkened. You're narrow-minded, he said coldly. I won't kill you for Yun's sake. Accept your punishment. Relieved that Yun was out of harm's way, Xiao Kun moved his hands into a rapid series of seals. Shape-shifting illusion. Two perfect copies of Xiao Kun blinked into being at his sides. With a flick of his finger, the two clones fired forward at Yunshan. As a dozong, Xiao Kun could have produced 4 clones with this technique, but he held one back. No need to use everything at once. Yunshan wasn't unprepared. He also formed seals. 2 afterimages slid free from his body. Unlike Xiao Kun's solid, indistinguishable doubles, Yunshan's clones were slightly ethereal, easier to tell from the original. He felt no panic. In fact, Xiao Kun's clones, who moved only at the speed of a pic de huang, seemed intentionally restrained. Yunshan's confidence swelled. The 4 figures met. In an instant, Xiao Kun's 2 clones shattered Yunshan's, dissipating into energy that vanished into the air. Yunshan's mind went blank. Combat hardened and usually steady, he was stunned into stillness. That momentary vacancy was all the opening Xiao Kun needed. The silver light in Xiao Kun's remaining clones' eyes flashed. They reappeared at Yunshan's flanks and used joint locks from both sides to bind him tightly. Before Yunshan could react, Xiao Kun himself materialized before him, his right hand raised and pulsing with golden light. The vague outline of a lock shimmered into being. Extreme Sealing Curse. Xiao Kun's golden hand struck Yunshan's abdomen. Golden chains erupted across Yunshan's body, snaking along his bones and veins. As they crept, Yunshan's vast, abyssal do qi began to leak away, first in eddies around his limbs, then in a steady drain, until every trace was gone. Chapter 124, Protector Wu high in the sky, Yunshan, struck by the sealing technique Xiao Kun had used, felt the terrifying aura radiating from his body ebbing away. Under the shocked gazes of the crowd, the power that had once seemed unstoppable was being drained. No, this can't be. Stop, he cried. Seeing his dochi steadily sealed by Xiao Kun was terrifying. Yunshan struggled with every ounce of will he had, shouting and thrashing, but it was useless against the control the clone exerted. Xiao Kun's clone, which possessed the cultivation of a peak dozong. As the seal finished, Yunshan fell silent, abandoned all resistance, and hung motionless in despair. In only a few breaths of combat, Xiao Kun had captured a dozong. The scene left everyone watching stunned and awed. Capturing someone was far harder than defeating or killing them. That Xiao Kun could do it so quickly proved his strength far outstripped Yunshan's. Haibodong felt the shock most keenly. He had expected a tough fight, but never imagined it would end in a matter of seconds. He was more grateful than ever that he had cultivated ties with the Xiao family. Xiao Yan, standing beside him, showed a hint of pride, relief that his son had grown so powerful. Xiao Yan, next to Xiao Yan, looked at Xiao Kun with admiration and longing, silently wishing he could someday turn the tide as his third brother had. Yun, who had withdrawn to the side during the duel, exhaled a long, trembling sigh when she realized Xiao Kun had merely sealed Yunshan's do qi and not harmed him. Her anxious heart finally settled. Yunshan, you've lost. Xiao Kun lowered his right hand, the seal complete, and spoke calmly. The hollow-eyed Yunshan slowly lifted his head. Seeing Xiao Kun's composed, youthful face, a new terror flashed across his features. He had not expected such overwhelming strength. When the danger passed, Yun rushed to stand between them. Her face turned to Xiao Kun, gratitude shining in her eyes. Xiao Kun, thank you for showing mercy to my teacher. Xiao Kun nodded with a small smile. Yun then turned to Yunshan, her tone a mixture of confusion and reproach. Teacher, Why did you insist on acting against the Xiao family? They never offended you. Now that this has happened, please, tell us why." Yunshan, still shaken by the defeat and aware of the unusual closeness between Yunyun and Xiao Kun, lost whatever arrogance he had left. After a long, reluctant pause and clearly deciding to switch sides, he explained in a flat voice. "Your Xiao family offended a terrifying faction. I don't know all the details. Not long ago, a protector named Wu from the Hall of Souls approached me," he continued. "He promised to help me break through to Dozong, on the condition that the Cloud Mist sect assist him with certain tasks within the Jiama Empire. The first task was to capture several members of your Xiao family. He told me he was only a protector and that above him were heavenly venerates. If a protector is at Dozong, then a heavenly venerate is likely a Dozun. The Hall of Souls? Protector Wu?" Xiao Kun muttered as Yunshan spoke. Around the square, others with sharp ears had also picked up Yunshan's words and leaned in, curiosity piqued. Yunyun asked aloud, bewildered, "The Hall of Souls? What kind of faction is that?" Xiao Kun didn't leave them hanging. "The Hall of Souls is one of the top transcendent factions in the Central Plains. Experts gather like clouds there. The heavenly venerates inside are indeed Dozun level." He paused, choosing his words carefully. He didn't want to reveal too much. Mentioning the Hall of Souls' due saints might cause panic, so he left it at that and added a calming note. "A faction that powerful doesn't even bother with the Jiama Empire. They won't send anyone beyond the Dozong realm here. Rest easy." At that reassurance, Yunyun's anxiety eased. Below the square, many who had been looking at the Xiao family with awe now cast pitying, quiet glances their way, and some even felt a touch of schadenfreude. The rise of the Xiao family had meant resources being redistributed. The emergence of a fearsome enemy cast doubt on the Xiao family's future. Yunshan listened to Xiao Kun speak calmly about the Hall of Souls, and a grudging admiration stirred in him. He couldn't guess what cards Xiao Kun held, but his composure in the face of such a faction left Yunshan ashamed of his earlier behavior. Then, as if recalling something urgent, Yunshan's expression grew anxious. "Xiao Kun, that Protector Wu should still be hiding somewhere in the Cloud Mist sect. Do not let him escape. If he gets away, the consequences will be endless." Having failed his task, Yunshan expected Protector Wu to be furious. Seeing Xiao Kun's calm demeanor and knowing his youth and ability to reach Dozong, Yunshan guessed the young man must have formidable backing, perhaps enough to stand against the Hall of Souls. Hoping to switch allegiances before it was too late, he tried to curry favor. Xiao Kun offered no reply. Instead, he fixed his gaze on a towering 100-meter-tall tree not far from the square and smiled with a trace of mockery. "Protector Wu? He's been hiding the whole day without daring to show his face? Now that I've found him, are you still unwilling to come out?" He had known Protector Wu's presence was likely, so from the moment he arrived at the Cloud Mist sect, he'd been probing and guarding against him. After Yunshan's admission, Xiao Kun used his vast soul power at the late spiritual realm to scan the surrounding area. It picked up a sinister Dozong aura at that very tree. The conclusion followed immediately. Protector Wu was hiding there. Xiao Kun's words drew everyone's attention to what had looked like an ordinary giant tree. The crowd craned their necks, watching intently to see if the Hall of Souls protector would finally reveal himself. Protector Wu felt a chill when he noticed Xiao Kun's stare and heard his words. Capturing Yunshan so quickly was beyond even him. Xiao Kun had to be far stronger. Now that he had been spotted, escape seemed unlikely, and fear crept in. He remembered how, earlier in the Cloud Mist sect, he had called Yunshan out of seclusion to capture him, then waited confidently. To a Dozong like him, taking a few members of the Xiao family, whose strongest was only a Do Huang, should have been easy. But then he had heard Yunshan's terrified cries and, sensing something was wrong, crept toward the square to see what had happened. Members of the Hall of Souls specialized in stealth, and he had moved without giving himself away, until Yunshan, exposed so easily, panicked and leaked a trace of qi, allowing Xiao Kun to pinpoint him. Regret flashed through Protector Wu for losing his composure. All eyes turned to the great tree. The square fell silent. The air thickened with questions. Was Protector Wu really up there? Would he burst out in force? Could Xiao Kun beat him? People watched every movement, unwilling to miss a thing. Time dragged, and some began to wonder if Xiao Kun had been mistaken when the tree was suddenly swallowed by a black mist. From that swirling darkness came a chilling laugh, like a crow across the sky. Heh, I never expected the Xiao family to produce someone like you. My plan's been ruined. If I report this to the Hall of Souls, it'll count as a decent merit. The crowd stirred at the sight of black mist. It meant trouble. Yafei and Yunyun looked at Xiao Kun in the darkness with worried eyes, scanning between them for a sign that Xiao Kun could handle it. The dark storage ring in Xiao Yan's hand trembled as the mist appeared. Even old Yao seemed unsettled. Facing an old enemy who had nearly finished him, old Yao could not stay calm. Then you'll have to be the one leaving, Xiao Kun replied coolly as Protector Wu's mocking tone faded. The black mist contracted, condensing into a figure wreathed in smoke. Two faint red eyes gleamed from the depths. Yun Shan, I didn't expect you to be so useless, beaten by a young man so quickly. All my efforts for you were wasted. Protector Wu immediately set his sights on Yun Shan, still held by Xiao Kun's clone. The medicinal pill that could push a Do Huang to Do Zong was a prize even he coveted, so Yun Shan's betrayal enraged him. Xiao Kun gestured, and the clone holding Yun Shan released him. One clone stayed to support Yun Shan, while the other returned to Xiao Kun's side. Protector Wu, even facing Xiao Kun, you won't last long. Prepare to be captured, Yun Shan shouted, his dochi sealed but his face defiant. Protector Wu bristled at Yun Shan's shamelessness. Black smoke churned around him, his red pupils flaring. He flicked his palm and produced a pitch-black chain that rattled as it uncoiled at his feet. Then, with a sharp motion, it lashed outward like a venomous serpent toward Yun Shan. Clearly enraged, Shutswu aimed at his former ally rather than at Xiao Kun. Yun Shan, with his dochi sealed, could only stand helpless as the chain closed in. At the last instant, the clone supporting him reacted. Its free right hand was suddenly sheathed in a golden-green gauntlet formed from heavenly flame. When the chain's barbed tip was almost upon Yun Shan's head, the clone grabbed it with that flaming gauntlet. The chain was spiral-fanged and laced with runes. Cold flashes showed how sharp it was. Protector Wu yanked, but the section in the clone's grasp held firm. The heat of the heavenly flame sizzled along the metal, hissing corrosively. Black smoke rose, and within it faint cries, as if souls were trapped in the chain itself. Under the relentless flame, the chain began to melt. What remained snapped back into Protector Wu's hand, now a link shorter. Protector Wu stared at the shortened length, face drained. He had forged that chain from hundreds, perhaps thousands of souls. It had been a major contribution to the Hall of Souls. That it had been destroyed so easily by Xiao Kun's heavenly flame hurt and panicked him. With the fight begun, Xiao Kun ordered Yun Shan and Yun Yun to descend and take cover. One clone guided Yun Shan down, while the other took position to protect the gathered Xiao family members. Xiao Kun did not trust Protector Wu to play fair. Once they were arranged, Xiao Kun turned his full attention back to Protector Wu. Realizing the gap between them, Protector Wu's composure slipped. The golden-green heavenly flame was a special restraint on him. His usual soul-attacking chain had been rendered useless. Rapidly, his mind worked on escape plans as the standoff continued. Chapter 126, Escape. When the mysterious Hall of Souls protector Wu found himself at a disadvantage in his first clash with Xiao Kun, everyone below secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Yun Yun, who had returned to the ground with Yun Shan, watched the composed figure in the sky. She knew Xiao Kun had spared Yun Shan not because of anything the latter had done to the Xiao family, but entirely for her sake. Gratitude swelled in her chest, and the liquid tenderness in her eyes deepened. Xiao Kun did not notice. He had simply taken one more step toward winning Yun Yun's heart. Protector Wu, already planning his retreat, kept his aura unbowed. Red eyes glowed from within the black mist as he stared at Xiao Kun. I didn't expect you to protect Yun Shan, someone who betrayed you. That surprises me, he said coldly. He has renounced darkness for light. You won't kill him just because you wish to. Besides, his crime isn't punishable by death, Xiao Kun replied calmly. Protector Wu snorted in displeasure, but he felt the weight of Xiao Kun's pressure and could tell an attack was coming. He hurried to strike first. If he waited and reacted while weaker, he would be finished. His 10 fingers left after images as, amid a chorus of whistling sounds, 10 chains erupted from his body, coiling in midair until they condensed into a long black chain spear. "Go!" he snarled. The massive spear, wrapped in swirling black mist, shot at Xiao Kun. Rather than test Protector Wu's methods by attacking outright, Xiao Kun formed a giant golden-green palm several meters across in front of him to block. When the spear lunged forward, Xiao Kun pushed with his right hand, and the palm accelerated, flashing across the sky to meet the black spear. Wind howled from the collision as the spear and palm smashed into each other under 1,000 stunned gazes. Boom! An earth-shattering roar rolled out, sending a broad annular shockwave across the entire cloud mist sect and scattering the clouds above the plaza. Those gathered below felt ears ring. The weaker ones even bled from their ears and took serious damage. Yun immediately ordered all Cloud Mist sect disciples of low strength to evacuate the plaza, and the various imperial families began ushering their juniors away as well. The Xiao family group, protected by Xiao Kun's clones, remained safe. Xiao Kun glanced down at the panicked crowd, then turned his attention back to the duel. He had deliberately kept the energy from spilling downward earlier. Otherwise, many more would have been hurt by the blast. After a brief standoff, the tip of the black chain spear began to crack with a sharp series of snaps. Like dominoes, the chains started splintering apart. Black mist and shrill screams poured out from the breaking spear, but the abnormal golden-green flame of Xiao Kun's palm incinerated them instantly. The palm pressed forward, shattering and melting the black chains. Seeing he could not win in a direct contest, Protector Wu flashed his figure and dodged, leaving his original position. The palm, having lost its target, struck a nearby mountain peak of the Cloud Mist sect. The summit crumbled. Scorched boulders broke loose and cascaded down like molten rock, and the surrounding air warmed noticeably. Even those below the Douling level began to sweat from the sudden heat. "Protector Wu, if you have any other tricks, use them now. You won't get another chance," Xiao Kun warned, his tone flat. He had used only half his strength so far and intended to end the fight quickly. Protector Wu's face darkened. Xiao Kun's casual confidence weighed on him. He formed seals in a flash and released an angry roar. From the black mist around him streaked out soul bodies of varying strengths, which surged toward the remaining Cloud Mist sect disciples and the family juniors who had not yet escaped. The black mist swelled, spreading rapidly across the plaza. Xiao Kun paid little heed to the soul bodies. His 2 clones could handle them. Still, the sight terrified many below. Among those soul bodies were 2 Do Huang, 5 Do King, and more than 10 Do Ling figures, already a formidable force that could cause serious casualties. The crowd gasped in alarm. Xiao Kun's 2 clones flickered across the plaza like silver ghosts. Within breaths, they swept through the oncoming phantoms and annihilated them completely. The previously screaming crowd fell silent, stunned into stillness. If Xiao Kun's clones could so easily dispatch those soul bodies, then they could easily crush the people before them as well. Awe for Xiao Kun shot upward. Jia Xingqian, an imperial family member, watched with a grave expression. He and Fama exchanged a bitter look. This display made it clear the balance in the Jiama Empire had shifted. The imperial family had long relied on Do Huang to hold power. Now that Do Huang could be so casually countered by Xiao Kun, the future looked uncertain. Above the plaza, Xiao Kun extended his soul power to probe for Protector Wu, but the black mist obstructed him, and he could not locate the protector for a moment. He pushed through methodically, then forcibly, as golden-green abnormal flames surged from his body and incinerated the fog. When the last wisp of black mist was burned away, Xiao Kun found no sign of Protector Wu. After a brief pause, he guessed the protector had used the chaos to flee beyond the Cloud Mist sect. Xiao Kun shot upward, scanning Yunlan Mountain and its surroundings. From the mountain's outskirts, he caught a black silhouette already streaking away at lightning speed. The Cloud Mist sect sat on Yunlan Mountain, and the mountain's area extended far beyond the sect itself. Protector Wu had already moved outside the mountain and was rapidly disappearing. Xiao Kun could not afford to hesitate. A silver light flashed in his eyes, and he gave chase. Chapter 127, Defeating Protector Wu. Protector Wu's thoughts raced. Damn Xiao Kun. I didn't expect someone like him to come from the Xiao family. I have to report this at once and get Elder Zun to eliminate this hidden danger. He felt a fresh pang of regret remembering the dozen or so powerful souls he'd released to cover his escape. Years of gains wasted, discarded simply to draw Xiao Kun's attention. Anger toward Xiao Kun hardened into hatred. As he put distance between them, the idea of returning to the Jiama Empire to plot revenge took hold. He told himself that since they were both Dozong and he had trained in advanced Do techniques from the Hall of Souls, if he focused only on escaping, he could still outrun Xiao Kun. Confident in that thought, he began to relax. Then, in the midst of that complacency, a faint disturbance in the space behind him caught his eye. Before he could react, Xiao Kun flashed out. In a stunned instant, Xiao Kun's fist, wreathed in otherworldly flame, struck Protector Wu in the back. Protector Wu's body was launched like a cannonball, crashing into the forest. The shock carved a yellow gully through the green undergrowth, over 100 meters long. Xiao Kun had not flown after him. High-speed flight would have made sharp friction sounds. He had instead used a shape-shifting illusion to appear directly behind Protector Wu, leaving the latter no time to defend. Xiao Kun flicked his sleeve and a gust of wind cleared the smoke, revealing Protector Wu standing. Outwardly, he bore no wounds, but the black mist that constantly swirled around him was dimmer, his aura noticeably weaker. He was injured. Word of the clash spread. Those who could fly ascended, drawing near to see what had happened. From the sky, they saw Protector Wu apparently attempting to flee and Xiao Kun in hot pursuit. Protector Wu, trying to buy himself time and genuinely puzzled, asked aloud, "How did you suddenly appear behind me?" Xiao Kun smoothed the surge of Do Qi within him and glanced down. "You think I'd answer an opponent's questions?" he said, his tone indifferent. He wasn't a fool. Telling him would only let Protector Wu prepare next time. Protector Wu fell silent. He'd asked aloud more from hope than expectation. But the memory of that faint spatial fluctuation behind him made his pupils shrink. A terrifying thought rose. Xiao Kun had mastered Space Shuttle, the kind of technique only a Duzun should use. "You used Space Shuttle to appear behind me," he blurted. Xiao Kun only smiled and remained silent. The silence confirmed Protector Wu's fear. Bad luck had followed him all the way to the Jiama Empire. He'd expected at most hunters or minor opponents, not a freak like Xiao Kun, someone capable of Space Shuttle while at the Duzong stage. Escape seemed impossible. "Enough stalling. Don't struggle in vain," Xiao Kun said, then began to form hand seals. The vast Do Qi in him surged and spun, drawing the surrounding energy into a congealing mass. Gradually, a colossal yellow finger, more than 100 zhang long, took shape in the sky. Seeing the technique's immense scale, Protector Wu wanted to flee, but a chill told him he had already been locked on. The air around him thickened, like wading into a swamp. Swift movement became impossible. Realizing there was no evasion, Protector Wu roared and rapidly formed his own seals. Black chains erupted from the surrounding mist with a metallic rattling, stretching across heaven and earth like an immense web. From that same black mist came a low roar and a flood of tormented shadows and shrill screams, clinging to the chains and being absorbed by them until the chains glowed with an eerie darkness. "100-soul skylocking python," he cried. The chains writhed and reformed, coiling into a titanic black serpent as if given life. Above Protector Wu, the yellow giant finger, its surface marked with clear textures, stood poised like a pillar between earth and sky. "Heaven-severing finger," Xiao Kun intoned sharply. He pointed his right hand, and the yellow digit shot toward the ground like a bolt. As it streaked forward, space itself warped along its path. Faint black fissures crawled through the air. The surrounding region around Protector Wu seemed to harden, his movements growing sluggish. He struggled to command the black python to intercept the attack, but a sudden violent mental shock blanked his mind. He could only choke out, "No!" Before he could recover, the yellow finger slammed into him. The python's power collapsed. With a scream, Protector Wu and his summoned serpent were crushed into the earth. A thunderous boom rolled through Yunlan Mountain, shaking the ground as if from an earthquake. Where Protector Wu had stood yawned a pit over 100 zhang across, as if without a bottom. Xiao Kun nodded, satisfied. The first use of the heaven-severing finger's second form had been a complete success. It seemed that unless an opponent struck first, the overwhelming presence of the technique would mentally stun them, defeating them before they could unleash their ultimate retaliation. The spectators above the cloud mist sect watched in stunned silence. This display of world-shattering power had once again rewritten their understanding of what a dozong could do. Chapter 128, The Cloud Mist Sect Affair concluded. Third brother is truly too strong. I wonder when I'll be able to reach that realm, Xiao Kun muttered, staring at the great cavern his do technique had carved into the rock. He rubbed the dark storage ring on his finger that contained Yao Lao and shook his head slightly. Xiao Kun. Light flashed in Yunyun's and Ya Fei's eyes. Xiao Kun's overwhelming power stirred something in both of them. They breathed his name almost involuntarily. After a long moment of shared looks, each forced themselves to act casual and stepped back, pretending nothing had happened. I never expected young friend Xiao Kun to be so powerful. He really isn't on our level, said Hai Bodong softly, having finally realized the true extent of Xiao Kun's strength. If others were merely stunned, Yunshan was terrified. He glanced at Yunyun and felt that taking her as a disciple had been the right choice. Otherwise, he might already be dead and dismembered. Because the corpses and souls of Dozong could be refined into heavenly demon puppets, Xiao Kun had purposefully held back just enough so Protector Wu would not be destroyed. When he saw the heaven-severing finger about to obliterate the Protector completely, he angled the attack to spare him. Protector Wu, however, was in a pitiful state, nearly transparent, his aura thin. As a soul body, he was close to dissipating. Xiao Kun extended his vast soul power across the cavern, located Protector Wu's weakened soul, and forcibly bound him, dragging him forward. Once the Protector was before him, Wu realized he had been spared on purpose. He guessed Xiao Kun planned to extract information and immediately sneered, "Don't expect to get anything from me. Kill me if you must. Someone will avenge me." Xiao Kun, who had at first intended only to imprison Protector Wu for later use, became intrigued. His previous life had given him only a godlike overview. He wanted the granular details now. "Fine. If you have such resolve, I'll grant your wish," he said. He released the fallen heart flame, the most destructive force against souls, and began roasting Protector Wu's spirit. Mournful screams filled the cavern. At first, the Protector jeered through the pain. "Ah, Xiao Kun, the Hun clan has marked your Xiao family. Destruction is only a matter of time. I'll wait for you below." As the pain intensified without bringing death, Protector Wu realized he was being deliberately tormented. "Damn you, Xiao Kun, you broke your promise. If you're going to kill me, do it quickly." After more agony, the Protector's resolve crumbled. "Ah, I'll answer anything. Please stop," he begged. Xiao Kun remained calm, watching the figure twist in the flames and deciding the man had not yet hit the limit. He let the torment continue until Protector Wu finally blurted, "I'll talk. Hurry up and ask." A small, knowing smile crossed Xiao Kun's face, a trick he'd seen in another life, and he withdrew the fallen heart flame. "I ask, you answer," he said. "Yes, yes!" Protector Wu was no longer arrogant. Fear laced his voice as he surrendered to the questioning. By the time Xiao Kun finished, he knew secrets about the Hun clan that eased his mind. Crucially, the Hun clan had never taken the Xiao family seriously. Prior to ascending to the Cloud Mist sect, Protector Wu had believed the Xiao family consisted only of Xiao Kun, a mere Do Wang, not a threat. The guild's intelligence had shown many more promising young Do kings. For the Hun clan, a single fledgling Do Wang wasn't worth dispatching substantial forces. In short, the Xiao family's rise over the last 2 years had slipped under their notice. That meant, if Xiao Kun kept a low profile for another year or two, the Hun clan likely wouldn't pay close attention. Satisfied, Xiao Kun ignored Protector Wu's frantic pleas, sealed him inside a jade bottle, used the fallen heart flame to fuse the seal shut beyond tampering, and dropped the bottle into his storage ring. He turned his attention to the cloud-covered square below the sect, and in a blink of space-based movement, teleported to stand before the Xiao family members. They flinched back in shock. The other onlookers stared, bewildered at techniques they had never seen and couldn't explain. Only Yun Shan and Yun Yun, who had studied the ancient texts left by Yun Poqian, exchanged looks of disbelief after a moment. Yun Yun asked aloud, Xiao Kun, are you on the verge of breaking through to Dozun? Because no one could detect Xiao Kun's cultivation thanks to his breath-concealing jade pendant, they guessed only from what he revealed. Spatial movement is typically a Dozun technique, so it was natural they would suspect he was close. Preferring the Hun clan to misjudge him, Xiao Kun smiled lightly. I'm still far from Dozun. That was a secret technique. Relief rippled through the crowd. The idea of him becoming a Dozun so soon had been daunting. Their reactions suited Xiao Kun perfectly. Future inquiries from the Hun clan would be misled. With the matter of Protector Wu settled, Xiao Kun addressed the Cloud Mist sect leader. Sect Master Yun Shan, given your prior dealings with someone from the Hun clan, I will not remove the seal on your body. You have the cultivation to break it yourself within a year. Additionally, I fine you. You are forbidden from leaving the back mountain of the Cloud Mist sect for 5 years and will be supervised by Yun Yun. Do you accept? Yun Shan hurriedly agreed. The punishment was mild compared to his past seclusions. One of his previous retreats had lasted years, so this felt negligible. I accept the punishment willingly. I will supervise him carefully and show no mercy, Yun Yun replied briskly. She understood Xiao Kun was doing this mainly to give the Xiao family an explanation and to manage future interactions. Xiao Kun nodded. I trust you. After finishing the main business, Xiao Kun was swarmed with flattering words and fawning faces. He spent a while putting everyone off and then sent the crowd home. Later, in a pavilion high on the Cloud Mist sect's mountain, a young woman in simple robes stood shoulder to shoulder with a young man, both gazing out over the misty peaks. He glanced at her. Yun Yun's figure was graceful and well-proportioned. Her beautiful face held a gentle, watery tenderness that drew the eye. The two were Xiao Kun and Yun Yun. Since Xiao Kun planned to formally propose to Yafei once the 3-year agreement ended, word would inevitably reach the Cloud Mist sect. With his relationship with Yun Yun still undefined, he didn't know how she would react. He had sent everyone back to the imperial capital and invited Yun Yun out alone so they could talk privately. Perhaps because such privacy was rare, they had stood in silence for a long time. Finally, Xiao Kun, a man who felt awkward with small talk, spoke first. The scenery here in the Cloud Mist sect is truly wonderful. Ah, it is beautiful, Yun Yun replied, startled at first, then laughing softly in agreement. Seeing her laugh, Xiao Kun berated himself for being inept with words. Steeling himself, he reached out and with surprising speed took Yun Yun's soft left hand. She flushed, startled, and pulled her hand away a few times on reflex, but made no real effort to break free. He smiled, rubbing her jade-like skin, and inwardly decided that directness suited him better. After a moment, he released her hand, slid his arm around her slender waist, and drew her closer. "Oh!" Yun Yun cried, but she had no strength to resist and let herself be held. The air between them settled into a quiet intimacy. Xiao Kun breathed in the faint, elegant scent beside him and enjoyed the feeling of having her near. Yun Yun felt a little uneasy. They were in the Cloud Mist sect, after all. If any disciple or elder happened by and saw her like this, how would she explain it later? Still, she relished the sense of reliance she felt in his arms. Running a sect was lonely work. She had finally found someone she could lean on. Since Xiao Kun did not let go, she said nothing and gradually relaxed. When Xiao Kun felt the moment was right, he spoke gently. "Yun Yun, I like you. Do you?" "I feel the same," Yun Yun answered, her face going the color of ripe apples. Relief and joy flooded her voice. Earlier, she had seen the unusual closeness between Yafei and Xiao Kun in the square and had been anxious. Hearing his words washed that worry away. Xiao Kun was equally thrilled. They settled into the comfortable silence again, Yun Yun leaning her head on his shoulder as they watched the distant mountains. The scene was peaceful until voices drifted from the path outside the pavilion. "That Xiao Kun from the Xiao family is incredible. He beat our former sect master, and the old man was already at Dozong rank." "Yes, and it seems the sect master and Xiao Kun get along very well. If they were closer, the Cloud Mist sect could advance even more." Yun Yun stiffened. She jumped back, as if frightened, and hurried to smooth her slightly wrinkled robes. Xiao Kun let her go with a smile. He understood this couldn't be rushed. From her reaction, he knew she still cared greatly about her image among the disciples. Two elite male disciples, both due masters, rounded the corner and paused when they saw Xiao Kun and Yun in the pavilion. Seeing the very pair they'd been gossiping about, they bowed nervously. Sect Master, young Master Xiao Kun. They assumed the two had overheard their conversation and braced for scolding. Xiao Kun and Yun simply nodded as if they hadn't heard. The lads hurried away, cheeks burning. Xiao Kun laughed softly. Those two boys are quick to notice. I should give them a reward later. Xiao Kun, Yun called softly, eyes moist, a hint of reproach in her tone. The look only made him find her more radiant. They stayed together until dusk, before Xiao Kun returned to the imperial capital. He barely had time to cross the courtyard when Yafei's resentful gaze met him. He made a mental note to properly appease her that night and soothe her qi. As for Yafei's fear that Xiaojan might find out, Xiao Kun planned to visit late and set up a barrier. Who would possibly know then? He also remembered that Xiao Yan would soon be leaving for the Jianan Academy, so he knocked on his brother's door. Fourth brother, when do you plan to leave for the Jianan Academy? Isn't third brother getting engaged soon? I'll go after that, Xiao Yan answered with a glance toward Yafei. The engagement is about a week away. After it's done, I'll send the Lion King to take you. That'll save you a few months' travel. Xiao Kun brightened. Thank you, third brother. Xiao Yan knew that while he could usually command the Lion King for short errands, Xiao Kun's word carried more weight for a long journey. That way, even if Xiao Yan stayed in the capital a few more days, Xiao Kun would reach the academy much sooner and get to see Xiao Shun earlier. The thought pleased him. After a brief chat, Xiao Kun returned to his room. Over the next few days, he left early and returned late, shuttling constantly between the Cloud Mist sect and the imperial capital. He was determined to cultivate his relationship with Yun and prevent any trouble after the engagement with Yafei. Each night, he patiently talked with Yafei, and her worries gradually eased. Chapter 130, Showdown. 5 days after Xiao Kun and Yun confirmed their relationship, they fell into the habit of returning to the small pavilion. Side by side, leaning on one another, they became a picturesque sight. Because Xiao Kun had visited Yun for 5 days straight, their relationship was now common knowledge throughout the Cloud Mist sect. The pavilion had effectively become a new kind of forbidden area. No disciple dared approach. Who would risk interrupting the sect master's private time and jeopardize their future? Xiao Kun sat behind Yun and wrapped his arms around her slender waist. He breathed in the faint, refreshing scent of her hair by her ear. Yun's jade hand rested over his rough palm on her abdomen as she leaned back against his chest. The warmth, the closeness, the steady beat of her heart filled Xiao Kun with a deep, unshakable contentment. Yun's face wore a calm, happy smile in return. These past few days, doing nothing more than enjoying the view and talking quietly with her, had been blissful. Still, such peace could not last forever. His strength was still insufficient, and his engagement to Yafei was only 2 days away. He had decided he needed to tell her everything today. Just as he was about to speak, Yun interrupted softly. Are you going to tell me some bad news? She had noticed something off about him the moment they met, the way his expression held a secret, the irregularity in his pulse and breath as he rested against her. Xiao Kun only struggled like that when faced with a real difficulty. Rather than wait for him to stumble through it, she brought the matter out herself. Her words startled Xiao Kun. He hadn't expected her to be so perceptive, and it wasn't the opening he'd planned. He laughed awkwardly and changed the subject. No, don't overthink it. I actually brought you something. Oh, what is it? Yun's curiosity piqued. She smiled, expecting a typical trinket. Xiao Kun kept his expression calm and produced several pills he'd prepared over the past 2 days, 3 6th-grade Zhenghuang pills, a 7th-grade Great Sect Breaking pill, and a 5th-grade Complexion Beautifying pill. The Great Sect Breaking pill, an upgraded version of the Break Sect pill, could increase a Dohuang's chance of breaking through to Dozong by 50%. He'd never gifted one before. Given Yun's talent, using it to reach Dozong should be no problem. This should be enough to get you to Dozong, he explained. Yun was amazed by the cultivation pills, but what caught her interest most was the complexion pill. After all, A woman's appearance mattered to her. You really have all these miraculous pills. No wonder your cultivation has advanced so fast. She only examined them briefly, then returned them. These are too valuable. I can't accept them. As sect master of the Cloud Mist sect, Yun had seen countless treasures. She understood precisely how precious those pills were, the kind of items that could win the total devotion of a Do Huang. She felt she hadn't done enough to deserve such gifts, so she tried to refuse. Xiao Kun was quietly pleased by her refusal. It confirmed the judgment he'd made about her character. He took her jade hand, still offering the pills, and squeezed gently. You know my cultivation, Yunair. I might advance to Dozun before long, and my lifespan could increase significantly, but you're still a Do Huang and will age faster. Your assistance to me will only shrink over time. Please, take them. Yun hesitated. He was right. If he advanced, she would lag behind. The thought of growing old sooner and being less able to help him was painful. All right, I'll break through to Dozong as quickly as I can and be by your side. I believe in you. As Yun accepted the pills, a familiar electronic chime sounded in Xiao Kun's mind, one of the system notifications he had grown used to. Ding! You gifted Yun a 5th grade complexion beautifying pill. You triggered 10,000 times critical compensation. You obtained 1 9th grade treasure pill, Ding Yan pill. All items have been stored in system space. Please check. It was the 10,000 times critical compensation again, and once more the system rewarded him with the Ding Yan pill. Apparently, the system knew the effect such an item would have on a woman and offered a generous assist. The other pills were ones Xiao Kun hadn't refined, gifts from the system earlier, so they didn't trigger additional compensation. Seeing Yun's grateful eyes, Xiao Kun took out the prize the system had just given him and grinned. There's one more surprise. Guess what it is? Another pill that boosts Dozong cultivation? Yun guessed when she saw the new medicine. He shook his head. An 8th grade pill? She shook her head, puzzled. Unable to contain herself, she tapped his chest playfully. He smiled at her impatience and decided not to tease any longer. You liked the complexion pill, didn't you? This is a 9th grade treasure pill, the Ding Yan pill. It's thousands of times more potent than the complexion pill. He explained its effects, and Yun's cheeks flushed crimson with excitement. Her bright eyes focused hungrily on the small pill in his palm. Give it to me. Xiao Kun handed it over without hesitation. The mood between them turned soft and intimate. Yun no longer shyly resisted Xiao Kun's affectionate moves. She accepted them, even reciprocating as they grew closer. Time slipped by. An hour later, they had forgotten the earlier tension. Yun sat on the long bench in the pavilion, while Xiao Kun lay with his head in her lap. The softness beneath his head and her beautiful face, even from below, kept his spirits high. But dusk was approaching, and he knew if he didn't speak now, there might not be another chance. He took one of Yun's slender hands in both of his and whispered slowly, Yunair, in 2 days I will go to the middle family to propose marriage to Yafei. Ah! Chapter 131, Simultaneous Engagements. Xiao Kun's sudden words and the news that followed left Yun breathless. For a long moment, she could not form a reply. Then, as a Do Huang, she quickly replayed his words in her mind, and the calm look on her face drained away. Could it be, she wondered, that he was so kind to me today as some sort of compensation? The thought hit her like a cold blade. Tears sprang to her eyes and slid down, glistening, until one dropped onto Xiao Kun's cheek. Feeling the wetness, Xiao Kun inwardly cursed that things had escalated. He rose, gently wiped the tear from Yun's face, and feeling a pang of sympathy, hurriedly asked, I know I might be asking too much, but I really want to propose to you. Will you accept? Really? Yun's voice was incredulous. Perhaps her earlier fears had been worse than the truth. The present news no longer felt so terrible. She stopped crying and considered Xiao Kun's words carefully. She understood that her answer would change both their lives. After a long pause, she decided she could not let him go. Slowly she nodded and whispered, thank you. A surge of joy flooded Xiao Kun. The knot that had been troubling him for days finally unraveled. He stepped forward and hugged her tightly. Yun watched him, feeling both helpless and secretly relieved. She was sure she had made the right choice. Xiao Kun spent the rest of the evening making promises and slowly dispelling her lingering gloom. Because the day had been special, Xiao Kun didn't return to the imperial capital that night. He sent a clone to inform Ya Fei and the others that he would not be coming back. Yun understood his intent instantly. Her face flushed like a ripe apple, and she murmured, "I'll tidy up a room for you in my courtyard." "That'll do." Xiao Kun agreed easily, though where he actually slept later would be up to him. To present himself properly under the eyes of the Cloud Mist sect disciples and help Yun adapt to this new situation, he did not fly away. He walked beside her along a long stone path. They arrived at the mountain peak reserved for the Cloud Mist sect master, where an ancient, imposing courtyard stood. Inside, Xiao Kun was surprised by the simple furnishings. Yun assigned him an unoccupied room, but he did not go straight to it. Instead, he followed her into her boudoir. The room was elegant and suited Yun's serene temperament. Ignoring her occasional subtle nudges that he returned to his own room, accompanied by a playful bad guy glare, Xiao Kun stayed and talked with her late into the night. The distance between them closed with every word. At one point, ignoring Yun's faint resistance, he kissed her soft, clear lips. Emotions carried them away. Early the next morning, the first warm rays of sunlight filtered into Yun's chamber. Xiao Kun opened his eyes slowly. He looked down at the delicate form nestled against him, her eyes still shut, and smiled contentedly. He ran his fingers through her long hair and noticed her eyelashes fluttering slightly. She was probably as shy about this as Yafei had been, unaccustomed and embarrassed. After gazing at her lovely face for a while longer, he rose to wash. Half an hour later, as he lounged in the courtyard soaking up the sun, Yun's door opened. She stepped out, a soft blush on her exquisite features that made her even more charming. "Awake?" she asked. He replied. "Get ready. I'll be back the day after tomorrow." Then Xiao Kun returned to the imperial capital. Back at the courtyard, Yafei's displeasure about him staying out all night showed on her face and in her tone. She bit her lip and made her objections clear. Xiao Kun paid her only temporary attention. He had something to announce. Gathering the people in the courtyard, he declared he would propose to both families on the same day. The announcement stunned everyone. Yafei's expression went through a dozen shades before she finally sighed, resigned as if accepting the inevitable. Seeing her reaction, Xiao Kun felt a quiet relief and gave her an apologetic look. "My plan is to visit the middle family the morning of the day after tomorrow," he said, "and the Cloud Mist sect in the afternoon." "As long as it's arranged well, go ahead," Xiao Yan said after recovering from his surprise. New methods replaced old ones. He had never tried anything like this, but he trusted Xiao Kun's judgment. They spent some time discussing the finer points, then dispersed. Xiao Kun spoke privately with Ya Fei for a while, and then set about preparations for the proposals. Betrothal gifts were required, and Xiao Kun decided straightforwardly to present medicinal pills, an efficient way to display his ability and still be economical. He had few pills above 6th grade remaining, so he planned to use the extra day to quickly refine 25th grade pills and finish the betrothal gifts with a concentrated effort. Back in his room, he hung up a closed-door cultivation sign and took out the void-refining cauldron he had formerly struck in a critical moment. The cauldron was an ancient black. Using it, Xiao Kun discovered a new feature. Though the cauldron's original size was only about 1 zhang, it could be shrunk or enlarged by inputting dou qi. The discovery surprised him. This capability might even be of use in future battles. It made sense. Otherwise, the system's claim that the cauldron could refine in the void realm would be meaningless. How could a small vessel manage such vastness? Since he was making medicinal pills, Xiao Kun left the cauldron at its 1 zhang size. After deciding which pill to refine, he settled on the most popular strength-enhancing formula. Among 5th grade pills, the strength-increasing pill offered the best cost-effectiveness. He laid out more than 10 kinds of medicinal ingredients and began the refinement. Xiao Kun threw the golden-green life essence heart flame into the cauldron. With his power behind it, he tossed the remaining dozen or so ingredients in at once, performing simultaneous extraction and refinement. The strange flame worked quickly. the ingredients inside the cauldron turned into crystal-clear medicinal liquids before his eyes. "Condense," he commanded. Half an hour later, with a soft exhalation, an almost flawless strength-increasing pill surfaced from the cauldron. As it formed, Xiao Kun noticed that the usual unique phenomena associated with fifth-grade pills had not appeared. After checking, he realized the cauldron itself could conceal anomalous phenomena, an unexpected convenience that saved him some trouble. After all, if a room gave off the scent of refined pills every half hour, it would not only shock the world, it would disturb the neighbors. More importantly, the speed of refinement this time was nearly double what he'd managed with fifth-grade pills before. That was a huge improvement. Xiao Kun estimated he could now refine a sixth-grade pill in roughly half a day. Using the void refining cauldron saved him several hours. Refining a seventh-grade pill often took several days, so the time savings there would be even more significant. It was extremely useful. Over the next day, Xiao Kun repeated the process, refining pill after pill. By the morning of the second day, he checked his storage ring and smiled. 40 extra medicinal pills sat inside. He had intended to refine only 20 king-increasing pills, but the void cauldron doubled his speed, so he ended up with twice as many. He had also commissioned another batch of ingredients specifically for the king-increasing pill. Although he had 3,000 prepared ingredients from before, they were spread across many recipes, and there weren't 40 portions available for that pill alone. Since tomorrow was the engagement and he had finished refining, Xiao Kun decided to break his seclusion. He took down the seclusion talisman from the door and went to the rooms of Xiao Yan and Xiao Yan in turn, gifting each of them 20 king-increasing pills as compensation for their earlier critical strike. To Xiao Yan, he said it was a resource for the family. Xiao Yan accepted with a broad grin. To Xiao Yan, he said it was a subsidy for his cultivation at Jianan Academy. On the Fighting Qi continent, pills were as good as money. Xiao Yan was overjoyed, and after Xiao Kun left, praised him to Yao Lao. Xiao Kun was pleased by their reactions, and even more pleased by the system's critical strike rewards. Because he'd given away so much, the compensations weren't enormous, but they were exactly what he expected. Xiao Zhan's compensation was a hundredfold critical strike, 10 sixth-grade king-increasing pills, and 10 sixth-grade Huangji pills returned to Xiao Kun. Xiao Yan's was a thousandfold critical strike, 10 seventh-grade sect-increasing pills, and 10 seventh-grade great sect-breaking pills. Perfect. The betrothal gifts this time were focused on sixth-grade pills, and that would do. He wasn't versed in the details of formal engagement arrangements, so he entrusted the bulk of the preparations to his father, Xiao Zhan, giving him 10 million gold coins to handle. He only handled the most important part himself, the betrothal gifts. He'd already asked the Lion King to fetch his eldest brother Xiao Ding and second brother Xiao Li. They were expected in the imperial capital that night. With everything in hand, Xiao Kun took out his green lotus sacred seat to cultivate, squeezing every last moment of preparation from the day. The next morning, a bustle within the manor woke him. The day of the engagement had arrived. He put away the green lotus seat and stepped out to find the middle family's estate hung with lanterns and colored streamers, the courtyard awash in red and festivity. It was more like a wedding than an engagement, but the middle family clearly placed great importance on him, perhaps because of his reputation and strength. All his relatives were already waiting. Xiao Ding and Xiao Li greeted him exuberantly. Xiao Zhan, Xiao Yan, and the Lion King were present too. Ya Fei, the other protagonist of the day, had already taken her place in the middle family's reception hall. To make a formal visit, Xiao Kun and his group left the city and re-entered the middle family's compound in proper fashion. On the way, he noticed the whole imperial capital festooned with decorations and overflowing with laughter, clearly a citywide show of congratulations. Xiao Zhan had reportedly handed out gold to townfolk, contributing to the festive mood. Wutan City, which Xiao Kun couldn't see, was said to be even more ecstatic. The Xiao family's rule there over the last 2 years had improved life for many, and the city had sent warm blessings in return. 2 miles out of the city, Xiao Kun used his flame-sculpting secret technique to manifest 3 carriages drawn by auspicious beasts, creatures a little like the Qilin of old tales, each several zhang in size. The Dohuang aura they radiated, and the gold-green carriage trim made the sight imposing. The Xiao family were stunned. Xiao Kun then formed 6 more auspicious beasts, large enough to ride, so each family member could sit a beast, followed by the 3 carriages. Their heavy footsteps rattled the road as they moved toward the city. Guards at the gate noticed the massive beasts long before the party arrived. The being's Dohuang aura nearly set off alarm bells, until the gate guard recognized Xiao Kun's face and reported the situation instead. Orders came down to clear a path for the Xiao family, and the military obliged. The streets parted, people pressed to the sides, and the procession passed with reverent looks, astonished murmurs, and countless blessings. Young maidens gazed at the young man leading it all and whispered romantic hopes. By the time they reached the middle family's entrance, a crowd of important figures had gathered. Hai Bodong and Matir Tengshan of the middle family, and even Jia Xingqian, Nalan Jie, and other influential families and individuals from the Jiama Empire had come to see it. Xiao Kun greeted those he knew and ignored the rest. When the carriages were unloaded, Xiao Kun casually waved his hand, and the auspicious beasts that had intimidated the crowd vanished in an instant. Only then did everyone realize those lifelike beasts had been transformations he'd created. The revelation left them stunned and impressed. A technique of that caliber magnified their admiration for him tenfold. Inside the reception hall, Yafei watched the proceedings, smiling the moment she saw Xiao Kun. After everyone took their seats, Xiao Yan stood and formally announced, to much fanfare, that they had come to propose marriage between his son Xiao Kun and Yafei of the middle family, asking to set an auspicious date. Hai Bodong agreed readily, and after some discussion, they chose a wedding date 1 year from now. Xiao Kun produced more betrothal gifts, 10 6th-grade Zhenghuang pills, and 1 7th-grade Great Sec Breaking pill, which he handed to Hai Bodong. When Hai Bodong learned the effect of the Great Sec Breaking pill, his hand trembled slightly. He hadn't expected such a powerful item so casually offered. If this was their son-in-law, the future looked bright indeed. With the formalities complete, the couple accepted blessings, and the morning's festivities wound down. That afternoon, the same delegation arrived at the Cloud Mist Sect's mountain gate. The same auspicious beasts, 9 in number, and the same entourage that had paraded the imperial capital. The people who'd attended the Mittel family engagement this morning were there too. Everyone wanted to befriend Xiao Kun and show their support. Because Yunshan's cultivation had been sealed, Nalan Yanran and the chief grand elder came to greet them at the sect entrance. As the carriages were unloaded, the crowd again focused on the auspicious beasts, eager to see them dispelled. With a simple wave, the Dohuang emanating forms dissolved one by one, leaving the Cloud Mist Sect's cultivators awed and speechless. The spectacle was unlike anything they had seen. Nalan Yanran, wearing a complex expression, led them to the sect's deliberation hall. At the entrance, Xiao Kun found Yun, eyes soft and anxious, scanning for him as if afraid he wouldn't come. He took her jade-like hand, exchanged a few warm words, and led her inside. Waiting in the hall was Yun Shan, white-haired and dignified, his ceiling temporarily lifted for this special day. Yun Shan had been like teacher and father to Yun. His presence was natural. After everyone sat, Xiao Zhan repeated his speech from the middle family, and Yun Shan happily agreed. They decided Yun's wedding would be held the same day as Yafei's, 1 year hence, the 2 weddings to be held together. To seal the engagement, Xiao Kun handed Yun Shan the core betrothal gifts, 7 6th-grade Zhenghuang pills and 3 7th-grade sect-increasing pills. Yun Shan's face softened with a genuine smile as Xiao Kun explained their effects. He had been troubled by his slow progress since advancing to Dozong. Receiving sect-increasing pills of that value was exactly what he needed. The hall announced the successful engagement, the date, and the combined celebration. Xiao Kun and Yun accepted the guests' blessings. Thus, the unprecedented double engagement, the talk of the Jiama Empire that day, came to a close. Chapter 133, Xiao Yan's Departure. The day after the engagement was completed, the Xiao family made a bold move to prepare for their future presence in the imperial capital. They secured a huge mansion in the city center as their foothold, naming it the Xiao Residence. A property in such a prime location would not normally come on the market, but the owner's desire to curry favor with the powerful Xiao family led him to gift it with a smile. Still, Xiao Kun, never one to accept charity, paid the full price anyway and promised that if the owner ever needed help, he could turn to the Xiao family. A couple of days later, the excitement around Xiao Kun's engagement had begun to fade, and Xiao Yan prepared to leave for Jianan Academy to follow in Xiao Shun'er's footsteps. Over those days, Yun and Ya Fei, without Xiao Kun's knowledge, had grown close, so close they now behaved like sisters, erasing the mutual disdain they had shown before. Their sudden intimacy delighted Xiao Kun, but also worried him. The change had happened too quickly. He had no idea what they might be plotting. Despite his unease, the current situation was exactly what he wanted, so he chose not to interfere. The reason the two women had bonded so fast was simple. Xiao Kun was simply too impressive. Both felt they couldn't handle him alone, and feared he might collect more sisters. So they agreed to present a united front. Together, they felt confident they could keep a closer watch on him and curb his wandering eye. On the morning of Xiao Yan's departure, the family gathered to say farewell. A cool breeze eased the sting of parting. Ya Fei and Yun stood on either side of Xiao Kun, each holding one of his hands and sandwiching him between them, a scene that made many of the Xiao family quietly envy the fourth young master. Xiao Zhan was the first to step forward. He put a hand on Xiao Yan's shoulder and said in a deep voice, "Yaner, take care while you're away." "I will, father," Xiao Yan replied. One by one, Xiao Kun and the other relatives offered their farewells. Just as Xiao Yan was about to leave, Xiao Kun suddenly remembered something. He stepped forward and handed over two map fragments. "These are two fragments I came across. They contain information on a heavenly flame. I want you to have them. See if you can someday complete the map." "Third brother, don't you need a heavenly flame too?" Xiao Yan asked. "I have my own plans. Take them." With a puzzled expression but grateful, Xiao Yan accepted the fragments. He didn't know which heavenly flame they pointed to, but given Xiao Kun's earlier display of control over various flames, any heavenly flame would be of great use to him. He was touched and surprised that Xiao Kun would give him such valuable items. Those fragments were part of the map to the Jinglian Yao Huo, the purification lotus demon flame, that Xiao Kun had previously obtained. Xiao Kun did still want a heavenly flame, but the appearance of the purification lotus demon flame was still at least 10 years away. By then, he expected to have reached saint-grade strength, perhaps even the late-stage Deuce Saint. With the Do Sheng experience card and his own power, he believed he could seize a heavenly flame by force when the time came. So the fragments were less useful to him now. He gave them to Xiao Yan, hoping they might trigger a critical reward and yield something extraordinary. Xiao Kun watched eagerly for a reaction from the system, but after several breaths, nothing happened. When he secretly checked, he discovered the fragments contained the soul of the pure Lotus Demon Saint, which the system had defaulted to a human life form, meaning it couldn't trigger a critical reward. Xiao Kun's elation evaporated. He sighed inwardly. The system really was meticulous. Despite the disappointment, Xiao Kun kept his composure. He inclined his head to the Lion King beside Xiao Yan and said, "Lion King, I'm entrusting my fourth brother to you on this journey. Please take care of him." "Rest assured, young clan leader. If anything happens to young Master Xiao Yan, I will bring my head to you," the Lion King replied. "Then go." The Lion King's body flared with a strong purple light and shifted back into its beast form, a dozen meters long and sheathed in purple crystal. Xiao Yan lightly leaped onto its back. With a few reluctant glances from Xiao Kun and the others, they streaked into the sky and left the imperial capital en route to Jianan Academy. The Lion King tamped down its aura so that only those nearby and a handful of high-level powerhouses noticed the departure. But word still spread quickly. Rumors said the Xiao family's fourth young master had been personally escorted to Jianan Academy by a Do King-level demonic beast. The gossip only increased the Xiao family's prestige. People in the Jiama Empire spoke of them with newfound respect. The day after Xiao Yan left, Xiao Zhan, Xiao Ding, and Xiao Li returned to Wutan City to manage the family's affairs, leaving Xiao Kun in the Xiao residence at the imperial capital, though only temporarily. Soon, Xiao Ding and Xiao Li would bring key personnel to the capital to develop the family's presence further, and in short order, the remainder of the Xiao family would follow. 3 months passed quickly, filled with notable developments. With Xiao Kun's help, Yun ingested the ninth-grade treasure pill, the Ding Yan pill, breaking through from a 3-star Do King to a 7-star Do King. The pill also subtly enhanced her beauty, and she rewarded Xiao Kun handsomely that night. The Lion King returned to the capital a few days earlier and reported to Xiao Kun that Xiao Yan had been safely delivered to Jianan Academy. Grateful, Xiao Kun rewarded the Lion King with a 7th-grade Great Sect breaking pill to help him push toward Dozong. The Lion King was already at an 8-star Do King level and not far from Dozong, so the gift thrilled him. Meanwhile, several hundred members of the Xiao family had been moved to the imperial capital, establishing a visible new power there. The other families in the capital, including the royal family, kept their complaints to themselves. Privately, they were relieved that the Xiao family's rise had been measured rather than overtly aggressive. Chapter 134, Recruiting Fama Xiao Kun, even put on an air of friendly business, which made everyone sigh at the Xiao family's unconventional style. All of this had been his idea. He had no intention of founding an organization like the Yan Alliance the way Xiao Yan did in the original timeline. Xiao Yan created the Yan Alliance to rally forces and better protect the Xiao family. For Xiao Kun, however, no faction in the Jiama Empire could truly help him now, so there was no need to gather them. He could quietly develop the family, accumulate strength, and recruit a few alchemists or other talents when the need arose. During the past 3 months, Xiao Kun had stayed somewhat apart from Yun and Ya Fei. He knew his strength still wasn't enough to protect both of them properly. After training on the Green Lotus sacred seat, 3 months of hard cultivation had allowed him to fully control the surge of power that had pushed him to peak Dozong when he devoured the strange flame. He could already sense himself pressing against the Dozun bottleneck. Perhaps in less than half a year, he would break through to Dozun and gain the ability to freely manipulate space and perform long-distance shuttling. Yun and Ya Fei were also unwilling to remain weak and useless against enemies like the Hall of Souls, so they too were training desperately. Pleased with his progress, Xiao Kun reflected on the last 3 months. Overall, it had gone well. But that life of steady cultivation had to be put on hold, at least for now. Because although the family's stockpile of medicinal pills had once been abundant, supplies of rank 5 and below were running low. Early that morning, Xiao Zhan had come to tell him the inventory was nearly depleted and asked Xiao Kun to produce a batch of low-rank pills. Xiao Kun felt helpless. Right now, he was the only skilled alchemist in the Xiao family, so even low-grade pills had to be refined by him personally. That wouldn't work long-term. As the family grew, small batches would multiply into a huge time sink, hampering his own cultivation. He should only be refining the high-grade pills others couldn't produce, not spending time on routine medicine. Recruiting more alchemists had become urgent. After thinking it through, Xiao Kun decided to bring the Alchemist Guild under the Xiao family's control, turn it into an alchemy hall. That way, the hall could supply the family with large quantities of low-grade pills and also cultivate alchemical talent for the Xiao family. The plan was sound, but there was a problem: convincing the Alchemist Guild to merge. The key obstacle was the guildmaster, Fama. Xiao Kun knew Fama's reputation, an alchemist wholly devoted to the art, someone who'd give everything to advance alchemy. Such a person could be won over if offered the right incentive, and Xiao Kun happened to have exactly what would tempt him: the alchemical legacies Yao Lao had passed on, up to rank 8. Even offering Fama the legacy up to rank 7 would likely persuade him to join the Xiao family, gladly. With that decided, Xiao Kun went straight to the Alchemist Guild headquarters. The building was massive and impressive, its air thick with authority. Though foot traffic was a bit lighter than during the last alchemist convention, it was still steady. The guards at the entrance hardly blinked at Xiao Kun's different attire. He wasn't wearing an alchemist's robe, but that wasn't negligence. Everyone there had long since learned to recognize him after his recent deeds. Seeing him arrive, the guards straightened, puffed their chests, and offered a crisp salute, beating their right fists against their chests in show of respect. Xiao Kun smiled, nodded to them, and walked in. Young Master Xiao Kun is so approachable. He actually smiled at us. We're so honored. Xiao Kun didn't hear the guards' chatter in the hall. If he had, he might have reacted with a small, private satisfaction at finally being called a big shot. Thanks to his growing renown, he walked unimpeded all the way to Fama's private office. The door stood open. Inside, Fama sat at his desk, buried in a mountain of papers, his face lined in thought. Xiao Kun stepped in without hesitation and called cheerfully, "Elder Fa, what problem has you so troubled?" Fama muttered, "Some pharmacological issues." Then, glancing up, his expression changed. He recognized the visitor, the recently ascendant Xiao Kun, now one of the Empire's foremost experts. He rose in surprise. "Little friend Xiao Kun, whatever brings you here?" Xiao Kun returned the greeting politely. "The Xiao family's development is just beginning, and there are many shortcomings. I need President Fama's help with a few matters." "You flatter me," Fama said quickly. He was puzzled. What could he possibly do for someone like Xiao Kun? But inwardly, he felt a spark of hope. He'd heard Xiao Kun could produce powerful, unconventional pills. If he helped Xiao Kun now, it might make it easier to acquire those medicines later for study, and might even aid his own research. Hearing Fama's eager agreement, Xiao Kun came straight to the point. "I want the Alchemist Guild to merge into the Xiao family and become its alchemy hall. Elder Fa, what do you think?" Fama stiffened. "This isn't appropriate, is it?" He was stunned at first. Then, realizing Xiao Kun's target was the very guild he'd spent his life building, he reacted with instinctive opposition. It was the culmination of everything Fama had worked for. He couldn't immediately accept the idea of handing it over. Xiao Kun remained calm. "Aren't you going to ask what conditions I'm offering?" Fama's resistance softened. "And what conditions can you offer?" he asked, outwardly cautious, but inwardly annoyed at his own reflexive denial. He knew that if Xiao Kun was willing to make such a bold request, the conditions would likely be generous, and that he might regret opposing it and risk losing his chance if Xiao Kun walked away. After all, with Xiao Kun's command and reputation, the young man could easily recruit alchemists without him. The thought stung. Fama felt suddenly less indispensable and feared that a blunt refusal might drive Xiao Kun to bypass him altogether. Chapter 135, Ninth Rank Alchemist Inheritance. When Xiao Kun said he was willing to continue negotiations on his terms, Fama pressed him eagerly for details. "Elder Fa, I know you've never managed to break through to 6th rank alchemist," Xiao Kun said. "A big part of it is that you never had a proper legacy. Progress is slow when you rely only on your own pondering." Fama nodded as Xiao Kun spoke. Xiao Kun continued, "The reason you reached the level you did was because when you traveled the continent in your youth, you were guided for 3 days by an unfathomable alchemist, weren't you?" "How do you know that?" Fama's eyes widened. He hadn't told anyone that secret. Xiao Kun couldn't reveal that he'd learned it from reading the original chronicle, so he kept his voice steady. "You don't need to worry about how I know. If you're willing to bring the Alchemist Guild into the Xiao family, I will give you that Alchemist Great Master's legacy, up to 7th rank Alchemist. What do you say?" "What you're saying, is it true?" Fama's expression changed drastically. If Xiao Kun knew that secret, then perhaps the Great Master really was behind him. If so, the legacy Xiao Kun offered must be genuine. Hope and longing flitted across Fama's face. "Of course," he said without hesitation. Words alone wouldn't have been convincing, so Xiao Kun took out several sheets of paper from his storage ring, detailed alchemical techniques attributed to Yao Lao, and handed them to Fama. Fama snatched them and scanned them quickly. As he read, the cloudy look in his old eyes cleared, reverence and shock lit his face, and his body trembled. Seeing this, Xiao Kun knew the matter was settled. After a moment, Fama looked pleadingly at him. "I will lead the Alchemist Guild to join the Xiao family. I only ask that you give me the legacy as soon as possible." Xiao Kun smiled and welcomed him. He produced a jade slip containing Yao Lao's legacy up to 7th rank and handed it to Fama. Without ceremony, Fama pressed the jade slip to his forehead and used his soul power to read its contents. Satisfaction and astonishment marched across his face as he absorbed the information. At that moment, a faint chime sounded in Xiao Kun's mind, the system reacting to his gift. Ding! You have gifted Fama a legacy that extends up to 7th rank alchemist. You have triggered a 10,000-fold critical compensation. You have obtained a 9th rank alchemist legacy. All items have been stored in the system's space. Please check. A 10,000-fold critical that produced a 9th rank alchemist legacy. Xiao Kun felt a thrill. He had only planned to recruit Fama. He had not expected such a lucky critical. The system was usually quiet, so the unexpected notification startled him. On the Fighting Chi continent, 9th rank is the highest alchemical classification. 9th rank pills are divided into treasure pills, profound pills, and golden core pills. Most 9th rank alchemists are assumed to be able only to refine treasure pills. Those who can refine profound pills are extremely rare, even over decades or centuries, and golden cores have been unheard of for almost 1,000 years. Curious, Xiao Kun checked the 9th rank legacy's description and discovered it was the legacy of a 9th rank golden core alchemist. He couldn't help smiling. At least until he reached Dodi, he wouldn't need to worry about alchemy. The 3 most important obstacles for an alchemist, soul power, medicinal ingredients, and formulas, were essentially solved. For his soul, he had the burning spirit art, which promised an emperor realm soul upon reaching Do Sheng. For ingredients, he had the living spirit flame. And now, for alchemy, he had this legacy. It wasn't the right moment to absorb the legacy, though. Xiao Kun watched Fama as he immersed himself in the jade slip. 10 minutes passed, and Fama still didn't acknowledge him. Given Fama's strength, he should have finished reading long ago. The jade slip did not include pill formulas, so it wasn't overwhelmingly large. But Fama had a fixed, blissful expression, utterly absorbed. Xiao Kun guessed it was Fama's long-standing hunger for this knowledge that had left him so enraptured. Not wanting to disturb him, Xiao Kun found the Alchemist Guild's vice president, Chemier, explained Fama's state, and instructed him to ensure no one interrupted. Only then did Xiao Kun feel comfortable leaving. An hour later, Fama finally opened his eyes. A look of enlightenment crossed his face, and a surge of soul power equivalent to a 6th rank alchemist burst out, scattering papers and overturning chairs and tables. The room erupted into chaos. Fama breathed. 6th rank alchemist. He hadn't yet refined a 6th rank pill, but he knew he had broken the barrier that had held him back for years. Joy and gratitude filled him, and he quickly composed himself and went out to summon a grand meeting to announce the Alchemist Guild's joining of the Xiao family and push the plan forward. Back at the Xiao mansion in the imperial capital, Xiao Kun sat in his secret cultivation chamber. Having returned to the mansion, he had been eager to absorb the 9th rank alchemist legacy. Now, sitting cross-legged in the center of the chamber, he began to examine the 9th rank legacy stored in his system space. Chapter 136, Absorbing the Legacy. Xiao Kun knew that if he willed it, the legacy would condense into a palm-long black metal block, 3 fingers thick, etched with mysterious runes, and materialize in his hand. He resisted the impulse. The system had originally rewarded him with a 6th rank alchemist legacy, and experience had taught him that when such legacies were transmitted directly into the mind, they integrated far more completely. If he let the system pour it straight in, he would absorb it more thoroughly. The moment he decided, his head swelled with pressure. A torrent of information slammed into his consciousness, forcing him to clear his mind and devote himself entirely to absorption. He remained motionless in the secret chamber for the rest of the day, every shred of attention locked on sorting and integrating the new knowledge. Only the next morning did Xiao Kun finally breathe out. He felt as if he had been a 9th grade alchemist refining pills for 1,000 years, so fluent with formulas that, given the right ingredients, producing a 9th grade golden pill would seem effortless. Of course, that was only how the legacy made him perceive things. The 9th grade alchemist information, including its countless pill formulas, was vast beyond measure. Even as a Daozong, he had barely managed to take it in. His spirit still buzzed from the strain. He smiled wryly to himself and thought that if he'd tried to absorb this when he was only a Duhuang, his brain might have been crushed. If the legacy had been limited to skill knowledge, he could have understood it in half an hour. But pill formulas carried layers of detail and nuance that demanded time. Still, the wealth of knowledge inside those formulas was invaluable. After finishing, Xiao Kun left the secret chamber. A maid stood waiting outside, exhausted but anxious, clearly with urgent news. The Xiao family had recently hired many maids to free talented family members for cultivation. Xiao Kun's courtyard had been assigned one, Li Xuan, whom he'd come to call Xuaner. Young clan leader, you finally came out. The clan chief's been looking for you since last night, she blurted, bowing slightly. Li Xuan had been posted at his door from the previous evening and was worn out. She had only 4 duan of doji qi and had nearly collapsed from standing guard. Seeing her fatigue, Xiao Kun offered an apologetic smile. Xuaner, you've worked hard. Come with me to father's place, but you don't have to keep guarding afterward. Take a day off. He produced a grade 4 qi-gathering powder and handed it to her. Consider this a reward. Tears of relief brightened Li Xuan's eyes. That a dozong treated her so considerately and gave her a pill made all the long hours worthwhile. She had been lucky to be chosen among many applicants when the Xiao residents recruited maids 2 months ago. She didn't know why she'd been accepted, only that she had been, and she had served diligently ever since. As Li Xuan went to rest, Xiao Kun thought about the household staff. Qinglin, who had once waited on him and hoped to improve her strength under his guidance, had since retreated into her own secluded training. They had fewer chances to meet. Seeing how responsible Li Xuan was, he decided he might foster her progress in time. When they reached the family hall, Xiao Kun saw Fa Ma and several senior Alchemist Guild officials deep in conversation with clan chief Xiao Yan. As he stepped in, the voices died away. Xiao Kun greeted his father first, then turned to Fa Ma with a smile. Elder Fa really keeps his word. I don't usually handle implementation details. How far have your talks gone with father? Fa Ma laughed. Most of the specifics are settled. We were only waiting for your confirmation. Clan Chief Xiao Zhan was taken aback by our arrival last night. He looked at Xiao Kun with warm approval. Kuner, when I told him about this, he was surprised. I didn't expect you to accomplish another major feat quietly like this. Since you've confirmed, father, shall we begin the arrangements immediately? Leave it to me, Xiao Zhan said without hesitation. We'll make the arrangements. Xiao Kun scanned the high-ranking alchemists in the hall and let out a low, confident laugh. Thank you for your trust. None of you will regret joining us. The officials exchanged looks and, smiling, bowed. Then we hope the young clan leader will take good care of us going forward. From that moment, they addressed him by his title, and the hall filled with a new expectant energy. Chapter 137, Refining a 6th Grade Pill. The atmosphere in the Xiao family reception hall eased into an unexpected harmony. After listening to Xiao Zhan and House Steward Fa Ma converse for a while, Xiao Kun excused himself, saying he needed to cultivate. As his retreating figure vanished from sight, Fa Ma let out a low, admiring sigh. No wonder the young clan leader could become a dozong at such a young age, he murmured. That kind of relentless drive to cultivate, I could never match it. Yes, Xiao Zhan agreed. Kuner has always been so driven. Xiao Zhan felt relieved hearing those words, but his thoughts drifted back to the Hall of Souls that Xiao Kun had once mentioned, a powerful threat looming over the Xiao family. Perhaps it was because of that enemy that Xiao Kun cultivated day and night. A pang of pity and pride swelled in Xiao Zhan's chest. The family was rising because of Xiao Kun's sacrifices, but with Xiao Kun's exceptional talent, others might never catch up. That made Xiao Zhan all the more determined to shoulder the household affairs Xiao Kun lacked time for. With renewed focus, Xiao Zhan resumed negotiating the details of merging the Alchemist Guild into the Xiao family with Fa Ma. After Xiao Kun returned to his quarters, he sat for a long while, thinking. He had noticed his father's cultivation progressing painfully slowly, 4 months and only a 1-star advance, now an 8-star Do King. Part of that was Xiao Zhan's attention to family matters, but the deeper problem was their ordinary cultivation talent. Xiao Kun, who knew his elder and second brothers shared similar mediocre talent, came up with a plan. He would refine a batch of 6th-grade pills, then distribute them, By doing so, he hoped to trigger a critical strike effect that might yield a 7th grade pill, the Nirvana pill, that he had once given to Ya Fei. He could then use the Nirvana pill's heaven-defying effect to improve the cultivation talent of his family members and a few promising youths in the Xiao clan. If he could raise everyone's innate talent at least until they reached Dozun, he would no longer have to worry about talent bottlenecks for a long time. Acting on that decision, Xiao Kun went straight to the secret chamber beneath his room. He brought out the void-refining cauldron and took dozens of medicinal herbs from his storage ring, just enough to make one batch of Zhenghuang pills. Normally, he refined the most strength-enhancing pills he could, previously the king-increasing pills, and now the Zhenghuang pill. The Zhenghuang was a peak 6th grade pill and notoriously difficult. For ordinary alchemists, success would be nearly impossible. Xiao Kun, however, relied on his late-stage spirit realm soul power, the aid of his cauldron, and the strange flames. He figured at worst he'd fail once or twice before mastering it. Because this was his first time attempting a 6th grade pill, he didn't use his old method of dumping everything into the cauldron at once, as he had with 5th grade pills. Instead, he processed the herbs one by one, carefully extracting their essences. With the strange flames assisting him, it took only an hour to refine all 20-some drops of medicinal liquid. Each drop glowed a different crystal-clear color. The next step, fusing those essences, sounded simple but was the most dangerous. Different properties could react violently when combined. On his first try, Xiao Kun failed. The backlash from the pill's failure produced a shockwave comparable to a full-strength strike from a Do King. The void-refining cauldron absorbed the initial force. The remainder, Xiao Kun dissipated with a flick of his sleeve. He wasn't discouraged. He paused, reviewed what went wrong, corrected his approach, and began again. After another hour, he had reconstructed dozens of colored essences. This time, he fused them more cautiously, relying on his vast soul power to stabilize the reaction. Gradually, the liquids condensed into a fist-sized, multicolored mass. Relieved, he moved on to the slow roasting, using the strange flames to gradually temper the mass until it formed a perfect round pill. 2 hours later, with a soft cry of "Condense!" Xiao Kun produced a faintly golden pill that shimmered inside the void-refining cauldron. A rich, layered medicinal aroma churned, and energy ripples struck the cauldron's interior, building into a pillar that slammed against its roof. Remarkably, these phenomena remained confined within the void-refining cauldron. No trace leaked into the chamber. Xiao Kun was pleased. The cauldron had concealed even the aura of a 6th grade pill. Compared to the legendary Black Demon Cauldron of Yao Lao, which in the original tale could not hide the aura of the high-grade Earth Spirit pill, Xiao Kun's void-refining cauldron proved superior. When the commotion subsided, Xiao Kun plucked the faintly yellow Zhenghuang pill from the cauldron and slipped it into his storage ring. He rested briefly, then started another round. A month passed in this rhythm of day-long refining and night cultivation. By the end of it, his yield was substantial, on average 2 pills per day, totaling 45 Zhenghuang pills and 15 Huangji pills in his storage ring. The Zhenghuang and Huangji complemented each other, so he refined 15 Huangji pills to accelerate those taking the medicine even more. With a regimen of 3 Zhenghuang pills and 1 Huangji pill per person, the batch would be enough for 15 people reaching the Do Emperor stage. Refining by day and cultivating by night had other benefits too. Xiao Kun felt he was one step closer to breaking through the Dozun bottleneck. He stood in the courtyard, enjoying a rare moment of leisure beneath the warm sun, when the maid Li Xuan hurried over with a cup of cooling tea. "Young clan leader, please have some tea," she said. "Thanks," Xiao Kun replied, gratefully taking a sip of the sweet, refreshing drink. Li Xuan handed over a few small vials as well. These are foundation-establishing elixirs to assist cultivation during the Doji stage. They'll be enough for about 2 months. If you go into seclusion again, make sure you focus on your cultivation. Chapter 138, Critical Hit, Multiple Nirvana Pills. Xiao Kun checked his maid Li Xuan's cultivation and found she was still at the 4th stage of Doji Qi. For a 16-year-old, that was slow. As his maid, her cultivation should look better. Besides, The fact that she had waited outside his door all day a month ago had impressed him somewhat. So Xiao Kun took out the foundation-establishing elixir he had just refined during his seclusion. "Thank you, young clan leader. I'll work hard." Li Xuan accepted the pill with a grateful bow. She understood the gift was meant to raise her level. She felt a little uneasy being given a medicinal pill for no special reason, but she took it anyway, determined to serve Xiao Kun better. After basking in the sun for a while, Xiao Kun felt rested enough. It was time for more important business, delivering medicinal pills to his father, Xiao Yan. "Where is father now?" he asked Li Xuan. "The clan chief has no appointments today. He should be in his study handling family affairs." "Good." Xiao Kun set off for the study. When Li Xuan started to follow, he stopped her with a wave. "I have something important to discuss with father. Wait here." Li Xuan agreed, and Xiao Kun made his way along the courtyard paths. After turning several corners, he arrived at the Xiao clan's main courtyard and walked directly into Xiao Zhan's study. Xiao Zhan looked up as he entered. Xiao Kun smiled and spoke first. "As I came from my courtyard, I saw a few people in alchemist robes passing through the clan grounds. Is the integration with the Alchemist Guild going smoothly?" "It's quite stable overall. The Xiao family is no longer short on 5th grade and lower medicinal pills. But to keep those arrogant alchemists producing long-term, we still need incentives. Any ideas?" Xiao Kun considered briefly, then said, "If you want alchemists to risk their lives, giving them pill formulas and a legacy would be effective. In a few days, I'll hand over an alchemist legacy that covers grades 1 through 6, refining experience and pill formulas. That will bind them to us." Xiao Zhan relaxed. "That would be ideal. Thank you, Kuner. I'll trouble you again. I'm happy to contribute to the family." Xiao Zhan glanced at him. "You've been busy cultivating. Is there something else you came for today?" "Yes, father. I've recently refined some 6th grade pills, and I wanted to hand them over." Xiao Kun, cautious about luck and the uncertainty of critical hits, produced only 20 pills, 15 6th grade Zheng Huang pills, and 5 6th grade Huangji pills. He planned to test things first. Xiao Zhan had grown used to Xiao Kun gifting him pills and accepted them without comment. The system's notification chimed in Xiao Kun's mind. "Ding, you gifted Xiao Zhan 15 6th grade Zheng Huang pills and 5 6th grade Huangji pills. You have triggered a 100-fold critical hit compensation. You have obtained 10 7th grade sect increasing pills and 10 7th grade nirvana pills. All items have been stored in system space. Please check." A 100-fold critical hit that yielded the 10 nirvana pills Xiao Kun most wanted. He felt a surge of satisfaction. Without changing his expression, he immediately took out another identical batch of 20 pills and handed them to Xiao Zhan. Xiao Zhan blinked at the habit of giving things in separate batches, but accepted them silently. This time, the result disappointed Xiao Kun. The system returned a 10-fold critical hit, sending 200 6th grade pills back to him. Xiao Kun was a little stunned. He reasoned that consecutive gifts had likely used up his luck, so he decided not to risk the remaining pills. 10 nirvana pills were already more than enough for several of the Xiao family's core members. He took the 10 nirvana pills the system had just given him and offered them to Xiao Zhan. As usual, Xiao Zhan accepted without comment. Xiao Kun briefly explained the nirvana pill's effects, that it was a heaven-defying pill specially refined for the family, and urged him to use them soon. Hearing that, Xiao Zhan's calm expression broke into surprise. He had never seen a medicinal pill capable of such a heaven-defying change. He was excited and, after a moment's thought, deeply appreciative of Xiao Kun's effort and foresight. This meant he need no longer worry so much about the pace of his cultivation. After Xiao Zhan promised he would take the pills promptly, Xiao Kun chatted with him for a few more minutes before returning to his courtyard. A few days passed uneventfully. One evening while cultivating, Xiao Kun suddenly sensed a Dozong aura erupting from the middle family residence. The Do Qi carried a faint chill. He guessed that Haibodong had broken through to Dozong. Xiao Kun was surprised. He had not expected Haibodong's progress to be so rapid. He figured it was the result of Haibodong's years of sequestration at the Douling stage, combined with the tremendous effect of the Great Sect Breakthrough pill. Meanwhile, Jia Xingqian, who had been trapped at Peak Do Huang for years, was shaken to his core. Familiar with Hai Bodong's aura, he immediately recognized it and was stunned. Hai Bodong had only reached Peak Do Huang 3 months earlier. Now he was a dozong. Jia, who knew how bitter and slow breakthroughs could be, could only suppose that the Middle Xiao family ties had given Hai Bodong extraordinary help. Otherwise, such a sudden leap would be impossible. Jealousy and disbelief warred inside him. He hurried toward the Middle family to find out for sure. At the same time, deep within the Cloud Mist sect, dozens of miles from the imperial capital, the long-imprisoned Dozong Yunshan suddenly knitted his brow. He had felt a new Dozong aura appear in the capital. After sensing the familiar, icy presence as well, his expression relaxed. Yunshan had expected Hai Bodong to break through to Dozong. Xiao Kun could provide several 7th-grade pills that were crucial at this stage, and for the middle family, kin through marriage, he wouldn't hold back. Hai Bodong must have gained greatly from that aid. A breakthrough was only natural. Even so, the news still brought a touch of surprise. Confined as he was, he couldn't go to congratulate him. After one long look toward the imperial capital, he submerged himself again in cultivation, trying to wear down the extreme ceiling curse. Xiao Kun had left and restore his strength as quickly as possible. When Xiao Kun sensed Hai Bodong's breakthrough, he stepped out of his secret chamber. Spreading his golden rock wings, he rose above the Xiao family mansion and scanned the skies. There were already quite a few experts of higher than Do Wang rank gathered. They had come early to investigate the sudden Dozong aura. Seeing Xiao Kun, they actively nodded in greeting as he swept his gaze across them. He returned their salutations with a calm smile, then in an instant was beside Xiao Yan, who had been startled up into the air. After greeting Lion King and Baya, who stood not far from Xiao Yan, Xiao Kun and Xiao Yan compared notes about the anomaly. Since Xiao Kun knew Hai Bodong best, they agreed it would be proper for him to go offer congratulations. Deciding that, Xiao Kun transformed into a streak of golden light and flew to the middle family residence. At the middle estate, Mitir Tengshan and Yafei were politely receiving the experts who had come to congratulate them. Hai Bodong had only just broken through. Aside from those who knew him personally and experts above Do Wang, only a few guests had shown up. Because Xiao Kun and Xiao Zhan had chatted a while, Jia Xingqin and Nalanji had already arrived. The one conspicuously absent was Hai Bodong himself, likely consolidating his realm. Xiao Kun's arrival caused a hush among the gathered guests. Though a jade pendant concealed his aura and revealed no hint of Dong power, his reputation, especially for decisively defeating 2 Dozong opponents months earlier, made everyone take him seriously. That respect was natural in a world that revered strength. The only exception was Yafei. At the sight of Xiao Kun, she practically leapt into his arms, burying her face against his chest in a joyful, stubborn embrace. They had been apart for over a month because of cultivation. For her, it felt like a reunion. Xiao Kun returned the hug, then sheepishly turned to greet the others. The awkward scene eased the tension his arrival had caused. Noticing the amused looks around her, Yafei flushed, looked up, and linked her arm through Xiao Kun's left arm. He glanced down at her pressed silhouette and teased, "Already a 3-star Do Wang? You haven't been slacking off." "Of course not. I've been working hard," Yafei said, suddenly full of confidence. In just 4 months, she had stabilized the surge in strength from the Dingyan pill and then climbed 2 more star levels on that foundation, an impressively fast rise. As conversation resumed and more people arrived, including Fa Ma and Mu Chen, the crowd swelled. Then Hai Bodong himself appeared, treading the void realm in the unique Dozong manner. The chatter died away as every eye turned to him. Xiao Kun looked up. Hai Bodong no longer looked frail. His face had returned to that of a handsome middle-aged man, save for white hair at his temples. He walked down with a broad smile, clearly in high spirits after breaking through. Hai Bodong came straight to Xiao Kun, laughing. "Young friend Xiao Kun, your medicinal pill helped me tremendously." Xiao Kun waved the praise off. "Pills are only an aid. Your own profound foundation is the main reason you could break through, Elder Hai." "Your help is etched in my memory," Hai Bodong said earnestly. "If there's ever any task, I'll repay you fully." I won't decline such a promise, Xiao Kun replied. He accepted the thanks with the quiet ease of someone who knew Hai Bodong meant what he said. Their exchange made the truth clear to those who had been wondering. Hai Bodong's leap to Dozong had been made possible in large part by Xiao Kun's 7th grade Great Sect breakthrough pill. Faces around him brightened with new interest. Some began to wonder whether their own families had marriageable daughters who could be offered to the Xiao household. Even if Xiao Kun himself was unattainable, didn't he have 2 elder brothers? Marrying into the Xiao family could bring immense benefits. Their backing could very well produce a Do Huang in the future. Those idle calculations and ambitions among the guests quietly sowed the seeds of trouble that would one day trouble Xiao Ding and Xiao Li. Chapter 140, Preparing to go to the Black Corner region. Because the second youngest, Xiao Kun, was already engaged while his older brothers had not yet made any moves, their father, Xiao Yan, grew anxious. Suitors began arriving at their door one after another, exactly as Xiao Yan had hoped, much to the distress of Xiao Ding and Xiao Li. Back in the present, after finishing his talk with Xiao Kun, Hai Bodong moved through the crowd receiving congratulations. Everyone who studied him closely was struck again by how handsome and youthful he looked. Jia Xingtian, in particular, felt a twisting in his chest. Hai Bodong, of the same generation as him, had regained youth and broken through to the Dozong realm. Yun Shan had been absent for decades, so his own breakthrough to Dozong had been tolerable, but Hai Bodong had been weaker than him only a year earlier and had quietly overtaken him step by step. The humiliation and regret were hard to swallow. Glancing inadvertently at Xiao Kun, Jia Xingqian inwardly cursed that he had not seized his chance. Hai Bodong, I didn't expect that you, following Yun Shan, would reach Dozong before me. Jia Xingqian could no longer hold his feelings in and blurted out. Haha, neither did I, Hai Bodong answered, a brief flash of joy crossing his face when he saw a longtime rival humbled. As people continued to bustle forward to greet and chat, Xiao Kun handled them calmly, arm-linked with Ya Fei's. Evening fell, the congratulatory crowd thinned, and Xiao Kun quietly walked back to Ya Fei's courtyard with her. Their reunion, sweeter than a wedding night, made for a wonderful evening. The next day, Xiao Kun reluctantly returned to the Xiao family compound to resume his cultivation. He'd just taken out the green lotus sacred seat from the secret chamber when he felt the little heaven-swallowing python in his sleeve wake again. Over the past 4 months, the snake had stirred more often. Its sleeps were shorter and its waking periods longer. The two had spent so much time together that the little beast had grown dependent on Xiao Kun, seeing him almost as a parent. That closeness made it harder for Medusa, the other soul bound to the body, to break free. Medusa could do little but resent the little heaven-swallowing python. As their souls fused more deeply over time, things didn't play out as Medusa had expected. She had counted on her strength to gradually dominate the body, but Xiao Kun had been generous with treasures, earth-fire lotus seeds, medicinal pills, and other rare items. Those gifts made the little heaven-swallowing python far stronger, so its soul also grew powerful enough to hold Medusa in check. Even after 4 months, Medusa still found it difficult to surface. Anytime she wanted to linger outside the body, she needed the python's consent, which only deepened her hatred of the little creature. Yet Xiao Kun's impressive power at the Cloud Mist sect kept her cautious. She dared not act recklessly. The python crawled out of his sleeve and slid up to Xiao Kun's face, rubbing against his cheek with obvious affection. Xiao Kun retrieved the last Earthfire Lotus Seed that hadn't yet triggered a critical reward from his storage ring and offered it to the little beast. Eyes bright, the python transformed into a streak of 7-colored light, shot to the seed, swallowed it in a gulp, and wore a satisfied expression. A system prompt chimed in Xiao Kun's mind. Ding! You gifted the little heaven-swallowing python an Earthfire Lotus Seed. You have triggered a 10,000 times critical compensation. You have obtained 1 drop of Earth Spirit Marrow. All items have been stored in the system space. Please check. Xiao Kun's face lit up. With this, he'd gained another precious drop of Earth Spirit Marrow. From the Green Lotus Core Flame Lotus Seed, he had acquired 11 Earthfire Lotus Seeds. Over the past 4 months, he had given 7 of them to the python. His luck had been good. The 10,000 times critical compensation had yielded Earth Spirit Marrow multiple times. Including this latest drop, he now had 6 drops of Earth Spirit Marrow in the system space. He thought for a moment about how best to use them. The Earth Spirit Marrow would be most beneficial if given sooner rather than later, so he decided to distribute it immediately to his 4 relatives in the Xiao family and to Yun and Yafei, who were engaged to him. Xiao Yan was excluded. He was far away at Jianan Academy and would have to wait. When Xiao Kun reached to call the python back into his sleeve, he noticed an odd, scrutinizing gleam in its eyes. He knew Medusa was stirring again, trying to make mischief. Pretending not to notice, he scooped the little heaven-swallowing python up and petted it. Medusa, sensing she had been touched, felt a flare of grief and indignation as if Xiao Kun were petting her directly, but with the power gap she had no choice but to give the body back to the python. The little beast's innocent gaze returned, and it slid obediently into Xiao Kun's sleeve. Then Xiao Kun left the secret chamber to distribute the Earth Spirit Marrow. Time passed almost without him noticing. Another 7 months slipped by, bringing the total to 11 months since the 3-year agreement began. By his calculations, the Fallen Heart Flame incident at Jianan Academy would erupt in just 1 or 2 months. It was time to go to Jianan Academy. Xiao Kun, who had awakened in the secret chamber, considered everything and decided this would be his first true long-distance journey across the Fighting Qi continent. He would head to Jianan Academy in the Black Corner region. He was confident. In the Black Corner region, a peak dozong could run rampant. Even so, 2 months earlier, after nearly a year of cultivation, under the blessing of the Green Lotus sacred seat, he had broken through to the Dozun realm without relying on medicinal pills. He was now a 1-star Dozun who could manipulate space, counted among the peak experts of the Northwest continent. With the Heavenly Flame 3 mysterious transformations augmenting him, he could unleash power comparable to a 4-star Dozun. Relying on his own strength, even the Heavenly Serpent Mansion, once a concern, no longer posed a real threat. He had ascended another level, and a small, satisfying sense of accomplishment warmed him.